Everyone to Trojan Baseball 2021. I'm really excited for the season to get underway this week with games. Unfortunately, Mother Nature's been throwing us some curveballs here to start practices. So fortunately, we have the cages that we're able to work in. We're not getting a ton of defensive work out on the field just because of the wet conditions. So, if you guys have any input into trying to get to stop raining and drying out, we would much appreciate it. So I've got a list of items that we're going to cover here today for our parent meeting. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do this in person due to the wet conditions with Meet the Trojans, and so this is just a different plan, alternate plan that we can come up with and being flexible in these times. So introducing the coaches, my name's Josh Allison, head coach, which I'm sure all of you are aware. Corey Clem is the varsity assistant coach. We'll also be teaming some of the JV events. As we know, we've got 3 different levels that we're going to be utilizing here, so we're trying to do our best to come up with a good plan. Fortunately, we've got Coach Miller, Steve Miller's joined our coaching staff this year. He's working through JV and freshmen, as well as Carter Farrell, who's working to complete his coaching authorization, and once he has that completed, will be joining us as a coach. Right now, he's just currently performing managerial duties here for the squad. So we're really pleased to have these guys on board with us this season, and I think it's going to be a really great mix of coaches and that can help push your sons and develop their baseball abilities. I wanted to kind of talk first about our goals for the season. This has been the same goal that I've had, for our baseball program for the last 10 years. Number one is play as a team. We have to have team-first mentality. There can't be selfishness. You can't be sad or mad or angry, whatever the case may be, if you're not a starter, if you don't have the role that you think that you deserve. We have to make sure that we're making the best decisions for the team. And then number 2, have fun. I believe that if we can take care of those 2 things, that the wins will take care of themselves. So do what you can as parents too to help push those two goals for our team play, and I think great things will happen. My main goal as a coach, I like to put this out there for you guys too today, is I'm going to make decisions that are best for the team. Now, am I going to make mistakes? Yeah, I'm going to make mistakes, just like our players are going to make mistakes. They're going to boot a ball. Coaches do the same thing. But when I make decisions that I feel are best for team, and that's my most important job as a coach. Number 2, I'm going to always be honest with players about their skills and find roles for every player. Now, that sometimes that honesty, players don't like to always hear that, but that's my number 2 goal is, I'm going to always be honest with those guys. And then number 3, this is probably the most important thing that we as coaches do, is to help develop these guys into great young men. We want to help them develop their skills and to be great young men in the future, be productive citizens, teach them all the skills that are going to help them along the way in life, not just in sports. I have got the practice schedule and the game schedules. I did send those out in a remind in the app. You can always load the activity calendar, the game schedule. You can load that straight from fairfieldfuture.org on the activity calendar. I'll send out the practice schedule link again if anybody needs that. I'll send that out in a remind as well. Okay, moving on. I've got a list of things here that we want to talk about. I'll try to go as quickly as possible through this with still hitting the main points. So number 1, student athletes. Academics come first. We stress the importance of getting it done in the classroom. If we're not getting it done in the classroom, then you're not going to be much good on the field of play because you're going to be ineligible. So our academic eligibility policy, as it stands right now, we will be following the state policy, which means if they fail the semester, that means that they would be sitting for 30 days. Now, if the governor waives that again, as she has the last couple of months, then what we'll do is we're going to follow our Trojan baseball policy, which I asked players and parents to sign earlier this year. I want to make sure that we are enforcing that student athletes, there's no excuse for failing classes, so get your work done, make sure that you're getting that stuff all wrapped up. Expectations of our players, we're going to positively represent Trojan baseball. We're going to control our attitude and our effort. We really think about results versus process. Sometimes you hit the line drive to the center fielder and he catches it. That's not the result that we wanted, but it was a great process. Versus the little dink hit that we hit off the end of the bat that just barely makes it over the second baseman. That was a terrible process, but we got a good result. So we want to make sure that we're putting a good process. Number 3, prepare mentally and physically. Number 4, outwork our competition. Number 5, stay positive. 6, treat your teammates with respect. 7, be on time for practice. 8, follow the expectations and the guidelines set by the coaches. 10, make the right choices away from the baseball field, and then use the appropriate language. So we want to make sure that we're not having any language problems, including the W word, which is the same thing as base on balls. We don't want to use that. That's a lazy way of getting around on a baseball field. So, okay. Number 3, representation in public. We stress to our players that they represent our community, our school, our team, myself, and most importantly, their families. We want them to be courteous, please and thank yous, hats off in the buildings if we happen to make stops after games on the bus ride home. But it's important that we're representing our community and our baseball team with the most positive way that we can. Number 4, lifting. We will be lifting twice a week. That'll be at all levels for freshmen, JV, and varsity. We just kind of have to fit those in each week as they kind of fit into the schedule. Now, they are allowed to do extra work on their own time. That's perfectly fine. We just want to make sure that they're being smart and that they're communicating with their other strength and conditioning coaches of, hey, these are the things that we've been working in baseball, so they aren't working the same exact lifts. I know that as far as our morning lifting coaches, we're already communicating and what that's going to look like and giving them the plans of, hey, this is what our week looks like, so that way they can adjust. Number 5, camp, vacations, and just our missing policy. Varsity baseball players should not miss games for any reason. Missed games will result in missing the same number when they return. So if they miss a doubleheader for a vacation, they're going to sit a doubleheader when they get back. So that's been our policy. We really want to make sure that we're thinking about being in a varsity sport of being there for your teammates. Now, if missing a practice becomes necessary for any reason, as long as we know in advance that we can work with them. Although it's not ideal for the JV and freshman teams to miss games for camps or vacations, etc., as long as we know in advance, we're going to work with them 2 weeks in advance so that we can make plans as a coaching staff as far as pitching plans and that kind of things. Now, please try to avoid missing those games, but there's no state tournament for JV and freshmen, so we have a little bit more leniency in that situation. Now, this year, our numbers at each level for JV for freshmen are going to be a little bit lower, so it's going to be really important to try to not miss games, as we're going to need those players. Okay. Number 6, player, coach, and parent communication. One of the things that I always like to make sure that parents know is we need a chain of command here so that we know how to attack if we do have some problems. So first step would be the son's going to come talk to the coaching staff. Hey, what is it can I do to improve, to get myself maybe a little more playing time? So that's going to be step 1. And remember, we as coaches are going to be honest. So we're going to make sure that we're explaining to them what we're seeing and the things that they can do to improve. If that doesn't solve the problem, then we would want to meet with the parent as well. And we'd have the coaches, the son, the parent would come in to a meeting. A time not right after game is not a good time to do that. We do want to set that up as a scheduled at some other point. Then if that doesn't resolve the problem, then we can bring in the AD. Mr. Courtwright would join us for that meeting as well. I hope that we never get to that point, but we always want to make sure that we're following that chain of command. Now, one of the things that you can expect your coaches will talk all you want about your sons. We're not going to compare other sons, other players in that conversation, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we're building a positive team atmosphere. We want to make sure that we're not doing that. The other thing that I ask of you parents is don't complain to other parents about things, because that's just a toxic situation and it starts building negativity around our program. Plus, I've never heard a parent say, yeah, I agree with coach. I'm not sure why he even plays your son because your son sucks. Nobody's going to say that, because everybody in this world's polite about that stuff. So we just ask that we follow that chain of command and have a little bit of a way that we can go about that process if situations arise. All right. Number 7, our lettering information. So if any of our players play in half of the games, that's one way to letter, varsity letter. As a pitcher, if they would get 3 wins, if they're a late call-up, so we have maybe a player that starts out the season on JV and then comes up later on, and they get to start in 75% of the games that they have dressed as a varsity player. That's another way that they could letter. If we have a starter that gets injured in the season, or if they were a starting player in the previous season and likely would have already lettered, meetings 1 or 2, then they would letter in that situation. And then if we become conference champs or district champs, then everybody would get a letter that dressed varsity. So those are the ways that we would letter here within our varsity baseball program. Fortunately, we have freshman, JV, and varsity, and I see I made a mistake here. I've got 2 number 7s. I apologize about that. We fortunately have 3 different levels here of competition, which means that we get a lot more playing time for our boys. Our coaches have worked really hard to evaluate our players, and just know that if they started at the freshman level, there's room to move to the JV level. If they start at the JV level, if they're young enough, there's room to move down to the freshman level. So we really want to stress that our players are working really hard because other guys are working too. You can't just be satisfied with where you're starting at, that we got to keep working. Freshman is going to be for 8th and 9th graders. Our JV could be anybody except for seniors, so seniors won't be playing down on JV. The freshman JV, generally, we're going to be doing 5 days a week, and then there's going to be one Saturday JV tournament. Our varsity program, I try to keep it to 5 days a week. There are a few that we have to go 6 days a week. I like to make sure that they have time to still be kids. And just pointing out again, there is fluid movement between each level. So just keep in mind that if they go out and they start playing really well, they're working really hard in practice, there's room for movement. The same thing if they start playing poorly, and if they're not working hard in practice, there's also room to move down. So stress that as well. Number 8, road games. The varsity will be riding the bus home after the games as most of the COVID protocol stuff has been lifted. I think that's an important part of team. Win or lose, we come home together as a team because that's one of our most important things that we're going to do. Now, obviously, if there's a special circumstance that's coming up, maybe it was a Friday night game and you're going to be leaving for a vacation for the weekend, or you're going to visit family, just communicate that with us. We can be flexible with that. For the JV and the freshman teams, we're obviously going to need to be a little bit more lenient since some of those boys don't drive yet. If they do drive, we would like them to ride the bus home. If for some reason they can't, it shouldn't just be that Billy doesn't like to ride the bus home. There should be some kind of a circumstance, like playing in Mount Pleasant and you live closer to Lockridge. You didn't want to drive all the way back into Fairfield to pick up your son. So keep those things in mind. I do believe that going and coming as a team is important for our program. If you are going to be riding home with parents, it would need to be signed out. If there was a reason that you needed to ride home with a different parent, then that's got to be approved by the AD ahead of time. Okay, number 9, concession stand schedule. I'll send out this link. I sent it out already. Carrie Engel, I think, is the one that's really kind of lining that up for both baseball and softball, so we need to really step up and help there. The other option is they just won't have the concession stand open. I know there's been a couple of times in the last few years, not last year, obviously with no concessions, but a couple of years ago where the concession stand would just close down after the first game of the night. So we'll try to do our best to keep that available for us. Okay, parent challenge. I got just a couple of things left here. I want you to really think about what you want your son to get out of this baseball season. What lessons do you want them to learn from being in a team sport? Are your expectations for your son the same as their expectations of the baseball season? These expectations should be about these boys developing into young men. Encourage them to worry most about what's best for team and worry about themselves individually second. If you have any kinds of questions for me, I want you to email. What I'll do is I'll send those out, but I'll also compile a list that I can send out to the group. I really would like I need you to also email me just to know that you've watched this video. I tried to keep it as short as possible while still covering all of the important pieces of information that will help us be successful for this coming season. Looking forward to a great 2021 baseball season, and see you at the ballpark.